right, so let's move with schedule management. This one, although it is technical, it is actually easy. And the reason I think it's easy is because it's sequential. The processes follow each other. You go from, let's see, you go from, um, forget the plan schedule management. This is similar to when we were doing plan scope management. This is not a sequential process. This is your approach that you want to use for scheduling. Remember yesterday I showed you a WBS that I created in software called OpenProj, but I also showed you another one in Microsoft Word. So deciding that I want to use this or that, that's your approach. That was for plan scope management, to decide if I should use a tool or not, if we should use Excel for requirements documentation or not. So the decisions you make about the approach and the ground rules that you want to use, or what if we have to make a change, who will baseline, all the terms and conditions or ground rules that you want to apply for your approach. Those are the ones that you see in the beginning. It says plan scope management, and here I'll show you why we have plan schedule management. But beyond this, this is where we will identify the activities. When you identify them, you use decomposition from the WBS. You just break down the WBS into its activities. And don't be worried, you don't have to be technical because you're not the one who has to do it. You ask the team lead who you've assigned that WBS task to go and figure out the activities with their own teams. They know what they're doing. It's their specialty. It's not yours. Your specialty has to be project management. And then once you identify the activities, you can connect them in the right order. Which one has to happen first, which one is next. And even when you have activities coming, hey, my hands are like WBS packages, right? And the fingers are the activities. Sometimes you'll find that one finger here is going to connect or maybe needs to finish before another activity here on a different WBS needs to happen. So I will take information from the team lead here and then the team lead here, and then I will connect the activities in the proper order so then I can stay on top of it, right? So we will define the activities, we will sequence them, we will estimate how long they will take, we will finalize our schedule, and then we just need to keep an eye on the schedule. So it is just back-to-back sequential, technical. It is related to creating schedules. However, there will be lots of new words to add. So if words worry you, then put on your helmet or something, because there's going to be additional terminology that we throw in. Lots of new terminology. Things that you'll notice, things you need to know about different ways that we do scheduling. Here on this screen, it shows you that the top bullet that you see there, this is referring to Agile. And you see it says this is a form of rolling wave planning based on adaptive life cycles. And if you recall, adaptive is is another word for Agile. Iterative scheduling with a backlog. Agile always works with a backlog of features or requirements that they want to complete. And the goal is that they will, package them into sprints, do them, and then reprioritize the remaining backlog, pick whatever they can do in 2 weeks, put them in another sprint, complete it with frequent reviews like that. So it's like rolling wave, because at the end of every sprint, they have better clarity. And now that gives them more insight to be able to assess going forward. So that's called iterative scheduling using a backlog, and that's what Agile is. There's also on-demand scheduling. And in on-demand scheduling, they have a pile of work, a stack of work, and whoever is free will work on the next one. Okay, this is not necessarily what we do in project management, although it can be used in some places in your project where you have something repetitive. And you see here the concept is that the team pulls work from a backlog as resources become available. Right? And then the third item there, adaptive approaches, that's almost the same as what we were mentioning at the top, iterative scheduling with a backlog. You're using short cycles to undertake work, review the results, and adapt as necessary. That's the definition of adaptive. That's the definition of Agile. It goes the same with the item that you see on the top there. So PMI in PMBOK 6 refocused heavily on the concept of agile, and you're going to find that in 2021 that agile is going to be a lot more important. So if you're not too much into agile, then get your certification now, this year. If you wait till next year, you will need to know quite a bit about agile. Okay, agile is going to be a lot more prominent next year. So get your certification this year. Try as hard as you can to get it this year. The agile flavor is minimal on the exam. Next year, it's going to be prominent and the structure is going to be different. Moving forward, let's get started with the schedule management part. Plan schedule management here is just for the approach. So I like to read it backwards, and I would say, or maybe add a word. I wish they would add a word. Plan schedule management, add a word here that says approach. Plan schedule management approach. That would have been a much better way to describe this, because a lot of people read plan schedule management and they're thinking it's the schedule plan, and they get it all confused. So this is your schedule management approach. And here you're coming up with the policies, you're coming up with the procedures, documentation for how you want to plan, how you want to develop, manage, and execute and control the whole project schedule. So how will you be managing the project schedule? I can assure you, we don't manage the schedule the same way, all right? Some are using Excel, some don't use any schedules. Some use this software here. That's not me. I like to use software. I'm not a software geek, and that's probably my weakest area is software. But MS Project or the one that I showed you yesterday, OpenProj, they're very easy to use if you just get your hand on it, and you'll see that you can pick it up. It's not, and then there's a lot of online videos on YouTube that you can watch for a few minutes, and it shows you what you need to do. So I'm a big fan of using tools if they're available, but learning complicated ones sometimes it's not my thing. All right, but Excel, unless you're doing a very, very small project, it's a bit tough to actually manage with Excel, because Excel, yes, it can give you a list, you can put durations, but it's really hard to build in the dynamic changes. So I cannot, if one gets extended, one activity, I cannot see the impact on the rest unless I manually go change them, or unless I want to build in macros or something. There are creative people who can do it, and I can assure you Excel is a huge software, because once I ordered the book, I don't have it here, but it's, this is my head, right? The book is this thick. If you can see, it's this thick. It's half the size of my head. 1/3, I guess my head is bigger. But 1/3, it has a lot of information. I read the first chapter and I learned a lot. I gave up after that. I was like, I don't need to know that much about Excel. But you could do a lot with Excel if you want to do programming in it, and if you want to use macros, you can. But how many people really do that? So if you're going to be doing scheduling for a project, or going to be reviewing schedules for a project, I think it's best to have some sort of software intended for scheduling. And there's also web-based solutions out there. It doesn't have to be Primavera or MS Project or any of these. There's some web tools that are really colorful. So your organization should get into that. So let's take a look at what is in planning your schedule management. Again, this is planning your schedule management approach. And you see here that you come up with your, your schedule management plan as an output. And there are many things that you consider. See the tools and techniques. If I now show you, I don't know if I have them on the screen because it looks like I've already put some information here. These are similar to plan scope management. If I go back to plan scope management, it is the same exact tools and techniques, because what you're doing is you're assessing your environment and the tools available to you, and you're looking at what are the options and determining, okay, what should I use, right? Should I use Excel? Should I use MS Project? What do I want to go with as my schedule tool? But the schedule tool is just one thing. Let's take a look at what else goes into a schedule management plan. Things such as, well, the first one is the tool, okay? The schedule model development is the tool, and not just that, the iteration. So the model may also include whether you want to use agile or sprints and so on. That could be part of it. But it's also mentioned here, release and iteration length. If you're doing predictive or waterfall, you're planning the whole thing. And if you decide to use MS Project, then you could say that that's how you're going to develop the schedule. So the first bullet may be talking about the tool, the schedule model development, and then, or maybe even what you will now learn, which is critical path, finish to start and start to start, things like that, how we create the actual schedule. That's what they're referring to in the beginning there. And then the release and iteration length is whether you want to go with sprints. The level of accuracy is how, obviously it's clear, but some create draft schedules and eventually enhance them. The unit of measure, you want to know if your schedules are read in days, months, weeks. Very, very lengthy projects could actually be scheduled in weeks or months if you want, but most of the time we're using days. In IT, sometimes they try to use hours, but I think only in Excel. They will not, they typically would not use software for that. Organizational procedures links, some have ERPs in the organization and have some other software tools or organizational system databases. And sometimes your software that you're using for scheduling is linked to another database inside the organization. And when you apply a resource, it will mark them as already allocated now on this one project. So there's a linkage between the system that I use for scheduling and the other system inside the organization from HR maybe. So if there are procedure links there or other process related things that we need to consider, then that's something you need to consider when you're planning for scheduling. And then the project schedule model maintenance talks about how often I'm going to be updating this. I like to update whenever something significant happens. On a 1.5-year project, I think if I update every week, every 2 weeks, it's fine. I like every week. I'm a very restless person, so I always recommend to people to not go too long without updating, because you don't want to be questioned as the PM as to what happened at the site or with the software or with the test or with the process. Depends what your project is. I don't want to be in a position where I look weak, So anything that I'm capable of doing, I try to do. And maintenance, which means updating, not construction, it's updating your schedule to make sure you have correct hours or correct, doesn't even have to be correct hours, that certain things get completed as planned, Don't let it wait, it mushrooms into a bigger problem. And speaking of problems, the control thresholds is how big of a problem do you need to foresee or forecast before you escalate the problem to your management. Not escalate before you let them know. A lot of times we're waiting, we don't really given up. We don't say things are bad until they've really blown up in our face. And so you may want to set a threshold with your team or with your management that says, if we think we're going to be 1 month or more behind, we need to let management know before it actually happens. This is if we think, not when we are already late. Okay. For me, if you think your work is going to be significantly impacted, let's say I only gave you a 5-day task, right? I may want to set rules that if you ever think that your work is going to be delayed by, I think for everybody it's different, right? If you have a 5-day task, if you think you're going to be delayed by a day, even a day, I want to know. The reason is I may have a depending activity that a contractor is doing that's waiting for you to finish. So if you're late, the contractor is going to show up as planned if we already agreed with them and you haven't finished. So I really want to know. But this usually happens on a smaller project when I'm talking about days. On a larger project, let's say oil and gas, installation, that, maybe you can talk about a month. If you think you're going to be 1 month late, then let us know, because you know we may have to arrange for other things. So these are the control thresholds, the notification point. Rules of performance management, performance measurement. You could just go by variance from the original schedule, but we also will learn later on about earned value, and I'll show you how to use CPI and SPI, you know, the magic words that make you sound like a real professional. I'll show you those. You also need to discuss how we will be reporting on the schedule. Notice that in all of what we discussed so far, we actually did not discuss anything. We did not create the schedule. And the schedule management plan was simply just the approach that we want to use in working with our schedule. You should do that with the team, with the management, just to make sure that you're all on the same ground, same page before you move forward with actual scheduling.